R&B Crypto here on Terra Television. As always, I'm pleased to be joined by Breezy, and we have a great guest today. Some of you know him as 0xUST. We'll be mentioning him as Chris today, but Chris, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course, guys. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be exciting. We have some things to speak about with Redacted Cartel and just other exciting crypto news. But before we get into that, we can just get into some personal updates, what everyone's up to. I honestly don't have much to say. I have an episode coming out on Lunatic Station with Advias Protocol sometime next week, probably the week this is being published. So keep an eye out for that. I had to delay it a few days because I didn't want my two launches to line up with R&B Crypto and that interview coming out. And Breezy, you want to give everyone what Mighty Whale's doing?
Yo, and Mighty Whale Podcast Land just released a episode with Proteus Finance. They're a one-click DeFi strategy. Essentially, put your money in with one click. You pick a low, medium, high-risk investment strategies, and they fully invest your money in different Terra Luna protocols as well as yield farming opportunities as well. So that just got released. Make sure you check that out. Also, I launched the Mighty Whale Podcast has a Medium now. So what we'll be summarizing all the different Mighty Whale Podcast episodes, just in case you don't got enough time for the 1 hour podcast episode. Quick, 5-minute read of the episode so you can still get all that alpha. So make sure you check all that out. And that's on the Breezy. Chris, what you got for us, my friend?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting, last couple of weeks. So most recently, I was working at a crypto hedge fund and venture fund, and now, proud to say that I've joined Redacted Cartel as far as partnerships, policy, and also marketing is concerned. So, full disclosure, there's going to be some bias whenever we talk Redacted here, but always the truth, right? So obviously there's been some massive news with that in the Terra ecosystem, and that's been big news in my personal life as well. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to now, get down and dirty with the DAO work and really start expanding Redacted and its pool across the Terra ecosystem.
Congratulations on the new position.
Thank you so much.
I know we were speaking a little earlier about how excited you are to be joining this project. And for listeners who might not be fully aware about what Redacted's up to, could you just give the brief overview about what the mission is and what you all are trying to achieve?
Yeah, overall, Redacted Cartel, essentially, we are looking now, and if you're familiar with it previously, Redacted Cartel really started off with, if anyone is familiar with the treasury bootstrapping mechanism of opening bonds, whether it be for OHM or for CVX tokens, CRV tokens, those were the initial three pairs that Redacted Cartel had opened bonds for. And essentially it allowed Redacted Cartel to amass a rather massive treasury of these tokens that allowed them to have a say in the curve wars, right? And now moving towards, moving away from a rebasing model that's being done with and moving towards a fixed supply now with V2 rolling out, and now introducing what we call the hidden hand marketplace. This is going to be a really interesting transition for Redacted Cartel as a whole. And, happy to talk about how we're expanding to Terra and onboarding Terra projects on as well that are introducing VE tokenomics and allowing them to essentially have this generalized marketplace for bribes, right? And essentially this helps the Butterfly token as a whole gain value outside of rebasing, and in general just really helps cement Redacted as this core pillar of DeFi as a whole. Obviously, the VE tokenomics are becoming the next big thing. Everyone's trying to turn their tokenomics into, introduce a VE model into their tokenomics. And for those that don't know what VE is, I'm sure you're seeing it everywhere. It's vote escrow. So it's vote escrow or VEX token, whatever it may be. And essentially, this just allows one user to accumulate governance power by locking their tokens in for a certain amount of time. So essentially it shows commitment. And in return for your commitment, you receive more voting power. And as well with the voting power, you're receiving more, it could be trading fees, for example. And most familiar with like the VE CRV model or VE curve model, you're receiving boosted trading fees. And these tokens are valuable. This voting power is valuable. So that's why the hidden hand marketplace is becoming so, well sought after. There's a lot of demand for it. There's a lot of build up towards it because these VE tokens and this governance power needs a place to go, right? Some people just set and forget it, but other protocols can use it to their advantage. So this puts Redacted Cartel in a very unique position. Rather than being one-sided, it's now, multifaceted. It's like this, dodecahedron of like utility and access across all ecosystems, right? So I hope that gives a brief explainer. So I'm excited for our next conversation about it.
Yeah, for the
teasing who's coming on next time.
It's gonna be a two-part kind of situation because we got my guy Chris on here today, but next week we're looking at getting the founder of Redacted Cartel going to be coming on. We're going to be diving real deep into Redacted Cartel's involvement in the curve wars and everything like that. So that's going to be super huge. So Hidden Hand is a marketplace, you said, for bribes?
Correct, exactly. So if anyone's familiar with bribes, it's essentially the ability to bribe token holders or that hold certain governance tokens. So for example, say you're a VECRV holder, right? Ideally, you want control over, like, ideally, this other protocol would want control over where CRV emissions are going to, right? So, say I'm a protocol, I'm a DEX or some sort of liquidity aggregator or something like that, right? And I want my pool to receive more emissions, more rewards, right? What I can do is offer up a bribe in my native token to VECRV holders, and essentially this helps them vote. This helps myself as the protocol to help them vote my way, right? And in return, they're receiving a reward, right? This bribe, essentially. So it's no different than a bribe in real life. Some people might bribe a police officer. Some people might bribe, whoever, right, to do certain things that they need. So in DeFi, these bribes have been introduced to bribe certain token holders, or I should specify governance token holders, to be able to now vote in a certain direction and be swayed in a financial manner to do it, if that makes sense. It's literally a bribe. That's really all. It's no different than like a bribe in real life. It's just now applied on DeFi.
We don't have to call it.
So if I was,
we can call it decentralized lobbying.
Exactly.
Decentralized lobbying. Rick, your poli-sci degrees showing.
There you go. All that political science is flowing out right about now.
So if I'm Astroport, then just trying to give like an example. If I'm Astroport and I want a liquidity pool with more VECRV emissions, then I would bribe the holders and say, hey, we'll give you Astro tokens in exchange for this. Is that kind of?
Think of it more like this. Like, I guess here's a great way to put it, right? Say you're Astroport and you launch VX Astro, right? VX Astro will essentially have governance power over Astroport and what pools receive XYZ, right? So if you're another protocol, you would want to accumulate VX Astro because this gives you more voting power, right? But say you don't want to do that. Say you don't want to go and accumulate $100 million worth of VX Astro. There's already $100 million worth of VX Astro because there's $100 million worth of VX Astro locked that people have already committed, right? Like they've taken their X Astro, they've locked it for now VX Astro. And you want to bribe these people to vote in your direction. That's where Hidden Hand will come in. You'll be able to have a marketplace where you don't even have to accumulate it yourself. So it's more capital efficient for other protocols that want to participate in bribing. Essentially, you don't need to go and do it yourself, right? You can tap into the governance power that already exists without the financial, requirement, or the capital intensive requirement, I should say, of accumulating said governance token yourself. You can already bribe those that do have that governance power. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
At least I'll try to make more sense out of it. I have VX Astro, and you want me to vote in the direction for Mighty Whale Podcast, right? To get a grant or something. You know what I mean? Therefore, you're offering me, I don't know, it could be 100 UST, or you're offering me 3 Luna, right? In order to vote in the direction that you want me to vote. And I'm like, okay, I will accept this bribe. I hand you my governance power, meaning that I vote in that direction, and I receive for voting in that direction the reward of 3 Luna, 100 UST, whatever it may be. That's the best way to kind of put it.
I'm curious.
Right? And then Redacted Cartel, in the meantime, right, obviously it is the marketplace. It will benefit somehow, just like DEXs benefit from trading fees. They benefit from, all these different activities that are happening on DEXs, right? Liquidity provision fees, like entering, exiting the liquidity pools, etc. Right? Redacted will charge a 4% fee on all bribes. Now, 2% will go to the DAO Treasury, and then 2% will go to RL butterfly holders. So RL stands for revenue locked butterfly holders. So going a little bit more in depth into the tokenomics and why Hidden Hand will really help to bolster Redacted Cartel's presence, and not only just the presence, but the treasury itself, bolster value for holders, etc. Essentially, there's going to be two options, right? So you can governance lock your butterfly tokens, or GL butterfly, or you can revenue lock your butterfly token. Now, we'll stick specifically to RL, or revenue locking your butterfly token, for the sake of this conversation. And then with 0x Sammy, who's the founder of Redacted Cartel, next week, we'll have a conversation more about, other things, other aspects of V2 and the governance side of things. But just for the sake of this conversation, like I said, the RL butterfly token will accrue value from all the bribes that are taking place on this marketplace, right? So Hidden Hand Marketplace facilitating all these bribes. This 2% fee that goes directly to RL butterfly token holders will accumulate very fast, obviously, right? So that's kind of what's in it for butterfly holders as well. So essentially, there's this interesting circuit of value that's received by everyone, right? And everyone's tapped into it. So I'm the protocol, I'm bribing user. Yeah, there is a financial output on the protocol side, but overall, it ends up being offset by I get what I want, right? I get the vote that's gone my way. The token holder, right? So RL butterfly holders, you're benefiting from having received the actual fee collected from the bribe, right? The protocol treasury itself, or Redacted Cartel's DAO treasury, right? So that's receiving value as well. So essentially, every single person involved is receiving some sort of value. So that's what's really interesting about this type of marketplace. It is a novel kind of situation here.
I'm curious if there's been any scrutiny by like government regulators or anyone who's just been asking questions about this, because when you think about it in a public forum, the whole idea of bribing might just raise red flags simply because of the term, and public blockchains are accessible by anyone. So I'm curious, do you know of any cases where there's been potentially inquiry into any of this? I'm just generally curious. I think
I personally don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I personally don't, but obviously this is such a novel concept that I don't even think we've gotten into that space yet, right?
Right.
Like, I think DEX has existed for a while before there was any sort of like scrutiny, even at a higher level outside of DeFi. We're still in this kind of, I wouldn't say echo chamber with DeFi, but like parts of DeFi are still in echo chambers, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you look at some governance issues, and one of them is voter apathy, and that is people don't vote. And so having an incentive mechanism to actually get people to then put their influence into the network is I think it's a very valuable proposition with this idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Right. That's always the biggest issue, right? Like, people that do have governance tokens don't actually exercise governance. So this is a really interesting way of actually facilitating participation in governance. So I think it's healthy for every protocol that participates. Mm-hmm. If not every protocol that actually has a governance token, right? That's the idea. It's really that anybody can tap into this as long as they have a governance token, right? It taps into the multi-chain narrative as well, right? So that's basically the idea.
See, I like that you're going multi-chain too. I love hearing anyone say multi-chain. Yeah, just because, like it's cool that we have all these different chains and that they only can work within themselves. That's fine, but at some point in time, they're all gonna have to converge.
Yep.
And those that don't converge are 9 times out of 10 going to be left out, because, if I'm in a situation where, say 10 years down the line, I can use Ethereum chain with Terra Luna's chain, but I can't use Ada's chain, then why would I be using Ada's chain?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I like that you guys are going on that front. Yeah, this is stupid. I don't want us to dive like too far deep in. I want us to leave something for part 2. Yeah, when we have you said 0x Sammy, right?
Yeah.
Should we briefly touch upon the UST into the four pool and redacted? Should we go into that with a big announcement recently, or should we hold off on that?
Yeah, I think we could briefly touch on how huge that is, right? So the curve war is
Do
essentially ending at the core of things. It is a pretty massive development, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think this kind of sets the standard for algo stable coins,
it.
kind of like reigning supreme, as long as there's sufficient, how can we say, not only liquidity, but sufficient backing behind it, whether it be exogenous collateral like Bitcoin, or other backstops, right? So that's basically the idea. Um, I'm really excited to see die, if that makes sense, because we're removing this kind of like centralized, in my opinion, at least piece of I don't even know how to really like
Because it's not
put it
even
into
really
words.
it's not even really a decentralized stablecoin. Because
Yeah, no,
it's I
I
think like
don't agree.
50% of it is USDC.
Yes.
It's about 60%. And that's crazy because if say 60% of the collateral is seized for whatever reason, then it becomes only pegged to 40 cents and not pegged to a dollar, right? So
Yeah.
I don't see it and like you got to think about it, especially what's happening geopolitically right now, right? Between
Mm-hmm.
Russia, Ukraine, etc. It the US and the West as a whole, right? Like it's essentially telling the rest of the world, listen, if you don't play by our rules, there are going to be consequences. And for a country the size of Russia, for example, to lose $600 billion in assets, you know, for I don't even know how many $1 billion of collateral there is on Maker, but off the top of my head, as you can tell, I don't check often. But just a few $1 billion sitting in a DeFi protocol, right? Quote unquote DeFi protocol. That should be done in way less than a night's sleep. It'll be done in a bat of an eye. Like as far as yeah, we as Circle, right, the purveyors of USDC understand that there's X amount locked in Maker. Why would we let this persist if we're fueling essentially the growth of DeFi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's just me possibly going on a rant right there, but essentially the idea is I would never feel comfortable holding something like DAI. I would never feel comfortable holding something like USDC, USDT. I stay as far away from it as I possibly can. And what's exciting for me is not just how I think of it, but it's the more exciting part is how other people are starting to see it now, and it's spreading like wildfire. At least that idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's been fascinating hopping in a couple very Ethereum centric Discord servers, and
Mm,
when Do Kwon put out Die Must Die, I've never seen the Hornets just, oh my lord, it was pretty
it's
brutal. I mean,
hilarious.
there's a lot of there are definitely defenders of Die and people who do not want to see that stablecoin disappear. So
Yeah, no.
it's there's definitely utility, I think, to some of the centralized stable coins. I don't think they have to be I don't think they should be powering a decentralized economy, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But at the
no.
same time,
Yeah.
like the influence that some of them have is absurd, and I don't think people quite realize how centralized or how shady some of the practices are behind the scenes.
100%.
It's fine for those like more of those kind of first time getting into crypto kind of investors. I got a Coinbase
Mm-hmm.
account kind of situation. But once you dive deeper into these DeFi protocols, it's like way too much of a risk, and it's not decentralized at that point. One
Yeah.
of the huge things that made me bullish on Luna was just decentralized finance. There's just that statement: decentralized finance needs decentralized money. Just that
Mm-hmm.
statement alone. And that kind of still, reigns supreme, because how can you be decentralized if the money that is flowing in is in fact centralized and can in fact be blacklisted? So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be kind of scared. Like when people were talking to me about Terra Luna, oh, you're invested in Luna. What happens if it gets regulated? And I say, oh, it's a Korean-based company for one thing, so that it doesn't fall under the purview of SEC, and then even going beyond that, it's decentralized as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't like from a government mindset. If I wanted to regulate like Luna and UST, I wouldn't even know how you do it.
Yeah, no, that's funny that you mentioned that because how, like Armageddon Protocol, I believe it's called, or Protocol
Mhm.
Armageddon. I'm not sure like the actual direction in which they have this set out. I think every single DeFi protocol that actually cares about its longevity and decentralization as a whole will end up moving to
Mhm.
that sort of model where they essentially have, somehow cooked into, whether it's code or whether it's just best practices by their core team or founders, whatever it may be, somehow just push a button and be able to essentially disappear from
Mhm.
the ability to have control over contracts, like obviously renouncing over ownership of the contract, um,
Okay.
disappear from any sort of significant holdings that tie them back. Like that statement on Protocol Armageddon that I don't know if anybody here has seen. I hope some listeners have at least seen this. Um, like Do Kwon talking at NFT NYC, or I'm sorry, that was TFI Alpha in New
Mm.
York. Um, NFT NYC is happening though. That's probably why I thought about that. So he had mentioned basically that TFL, if they came under significant regulatory scrutiny, has essentially a system in which they would just literally back off everything. All Luna that they own and control would be burnt. So obviously that brings a pretty significant amount of pressure on the actual price of Luna, and
Holy
and
shit.
it's yeah, exactly. That's pretty crazy. So I, I totally recommend anybody who hasn't seen it to go find the video somehow.
Uh,
Whether it's typing on Twitter, I don't even know if it's on YouTube, but just hearing that was incredibly assuring for someone like me, where I'm like,
yeah.
obviously I care about the longevity of the protocol as a whole, the longevity of the stablecoin system as a whole, right? Because Terra's not just UST. That's what many people fail to realize. It's not just UST. It's obviously, you know, 19 different other stable coins.
Mhm.
And that's what
Mhm.
that's kind of the scary part, right? It's like DAI has spent so long being developed into this one stable coin, right? This $1 pegged stable coin. Many other stable coins have spent so much development in actually creating a dollar peg stablecoin that they failed horrendously at.
Yeah.
And now you have Terra, who's not only created UST, which is obviously massive at this point, with an even more massive market, but there's so many other stablecoins as well, right? Like
Yeah.
the euro, the pound, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That have been successfully executed and already exist, and some are already even being used, right? So this is just a fantastic development and realization for me. And even Luna making new all-time highs today, I still feel like we're at a very cheap point. Think about all the other protocols to come online, or
Mhm.
projects, like I would say more Web2 focused IRL projects that are to bring all the other stable coins much more use case. I think they all end up denominating back to UST growth.
I see. I like what you said there, man, because a lot of times we have such focus on UST, like watching on UST
Mm-hmm.
market cap and seeing everything that's being made with that it is easy to kind of forget that we're in an ecosystem of over 20 different currencies. But they're not getting utilized as much as UST. But on the horizon, dude, we got Vertex protocol coming out, and it's
Mm-hmm. Great
and
point.
for the audience out there who doesn't know what Vertex is, they're going to be imitating a forex market using all of the various different currencies that we have in the stablecoin world in Luna. But to also kind of liken it to that forex market, because I had to look this up on the pod just to kind of see the potential of this market. Dude, the forex market is a $5 quadrillion market.
That's that's not that big.
5 quadrillion, dude.
Really? How much?
just for people who don't know what that is, that's 999.99 trillion
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
dollars
That
per
number is just
quadrillion.
ridiculous.
I always thought the derivatives market isn't the derivatives market like 1 quadrillion? Is that the
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and so
Something along those lines.
the forex market is 5 quadrillion?
yeah.
Oh my god,
Five
I didn't know that.
quadrillion, dude. Like, can you imagine like when let's say Vertex gets released now, and then 5 years from now, it's normal to use Terra Luna because it's gonna be normal soon, right? We're gonna normalize
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Dude, can you imagine when all these TradeFi people are using that instead of like their normal market? Because at the end of the day, it is more advantageous for a TradeFi stock guy. I don't know the fucking term.
Stockbroker. Stock investor.
TradeFi stock guy is what we're going with today.
Yeah.
It's more advantageous for them because it's lower fees and we're talking a 24-hour market.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that, actually, which is a great point that you make, is that ties back into earlier, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that an entire economy, and we're not talking about just a regular economy. I think Russia's like the third or fourth biggest economy on the planet. I could totally be wrong. I don't know if anybody wants to fact check that, but
yeah, they're
it's still massive though. It's still massive.
They are.
Like, for just the idea of this country's entire reserve being seized just because they don't play by the rules with the rest of the world, whether we all agree or not, it doesn't matter at that point. There's still, hundreds of millions of people in Russia that are being financially affected, right? Mm-hmm. This should be a warning sign to the remaining 200 plus countries that abide by the same global system that something is wrong here. This 100% still is bullish for the stablecoin market as a whole. If I was a TradFi firm, I would do anything possible to start moving funds, obviously legally as a TradFi firm, into stablecoins. Start operating with stablecoins and not operating with cash at Bank of America, cash at Merrill Lynch or JP Morgan, etc. Right? Like, that's basically the idea, right? Like, get your money out of cold hard cash sitting at some vault, right? And obviously move it onto, a decentralized public and eventually private ledger, right? Yeah. So
the thing with what's going on globally, so Russia's influence incredible amounts of natural resources. They export. There's a lot of commodities in there. I know everyone knows oil, gas. I think there's a couple other. Was it nickel? I think is another big one. They also are a huge fertilizer export, and they also, I think, export a lot of wheat. So that's going to affect global supply chains. But the thing, especially with, correct me if I'm wrong, but have the assets been seized or have they been frozen? I thought in some cases they may have been actually seized, and that is a whole like legal just mess. Because how do you a lot of countries have due process and you have to go through all of that and figure it out. And there's been people saying Russia's going to use crypto to avoid sanctions, which not likely, in my opinion. Just you look at to launder just the amount of capital or get around.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't even know how the fuck that's possible.
There's not enough liquidity. There's not enough liquidity to do it. I mean,
I don't know who would even trade you. Like, who would even take that type? First of all, the amount of eyes under that money is ridiculous. And yeah, like you make a good point. Maybe it's definitely been frozen, right? Like frozen until they play nice. But for me, like if somebody can freeze your shit, they can seize your shit. Right? So at that point, it's like, what's the difference between being frozen and seized, right? Like at that point. And I had to check just for like my own mental clarity. It's the 11th largest economy in the world, which is still fucking massive.
So they froze this entire economy.
Well, essentially they froze the entire economy's reserve, right? Like $600 billion, I believe. Yes. And tapped out of SWIFT, which is like they could still use other systems, but it just becomes more expensive. And this poses an even greater like geopolitical threat because now, and I don't know how this took this turn, but I think it's an important turn and just bullish overall for stablecoins because at the end of the day, dollars can be seized, so can stablecoins, certain stablecoins, I should say. But algorithmic stablecoins, if they work, which, obviously we're leaning towards the one that do work, right? Like UST or a fractional stablecoin like Frax, these that do have ways of backing themselves, collateralizing themselves properly, or, just using an algorithmic stablecoin model of some sort, which is obviously, many different models exist. That's really essentially, like, I don't even know who's not looking at this solution as the solution, right? Like, this could just be my naivety, but ultimately, I just see the entire world one day moving on chain. Whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't know what the number is, but that's essentially the bet here, right? And Unfortunately, there are geopolitical, like very rough geopolitical situations that will get us there. But I think that this is the way that the world has evolved, for the longest time, right? It's always been issues that have helped humanity just progress and essentially just use, whether it be better money or better systems, better infrastructure, whatever it may be. Um, I guess this is just me just trying to bring a positive light or optimistic light out of the situation. Like, obviously, it will pass, and it's not ideal for, I don't think, really anyone. I mean, think about gas prices in the U.S., right? Like, people are talking about $15 to $20 a barrel if oil reaches 200 to 300. I mean, not a barrel. I'm sorry, $15 to $20 a gallon if oil reaches like $200 to $300 a barrel, right? So yeah, that'd be ridiculous. Can you imagine?
What?
I think Previ just had a heart
Yeah.
attack.
I know.
Oh my, dude, I'm having a heart attack at the prices they're at right now, bro.
Yeah.
I live in Chicago, man. This shit is
$15 to $20.
Yeah.
Really? Is that?
Can you imagine?
Has that been forecast? I've seen as high as $10. I haven't seen $15, and like
I've seen so if let's think about it. If oil reaches like $300 a barrel, which if Russia puts the rest of the planet on a chokehold with oil, right, and says, hey, we're only going to sell oil to you at $300 a barrel, right? What stops the price of oil reaching that point, right? I think the U.S. only has oil reserves for like 33 days or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's some ridiculously low number. Can you imagine like the absolute paranoia and the absolute just insane like situation that would be here if the situation escalated and the U.S. is like, you know what, we're not purchasing your oil, but we'll use our own and we'll last for 30 days and maybe invade another country and steal their oil. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's not just oil as well. I mean, you got to look at the price of wheat, and if you look at the last time wheat has spiked this rapidly, it was one of the leading indicators was for the Arab Spring, which saw insane regional unrest, unprecedented in the Middle East. So yeah, this current price trajectory for a lot of these commodities, it's a little scary. And then I just want to go back to my point a little bit as well, and that is crypto is terrible for criminals or anyone who's trying to get around these regulations. That was kind of my point, was my spiel, is that you can't just start moving billions of dollars on chain. People will notice that there's not enough liquidity. And it's one of those things that I think the critics are learning the lesson rapidly, that this is not an efficient system if you want to try to commit shady acts, because of how just public and transparent a lot of blockchains are.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's a really great point. It's a really great point. And I don't know, like I'm just personally really excited for developments in privacy over the next year and beyond. I do believe like offering an element of privacy as a layer on top of these public ledgers that do exist is going to be extremely important and will very likely help onboard institutions. And as weird as it sounds, it might help onboard institutions. It might help onboard, you have to think about it. If there's the good, there's obviously going to be the bad. It will help onboard criminals as well. There's just nothing we can do with that. And I think that's one of the biggest dilemmas of crypto. Like, true decentralization looks like nobody being able to tell anybody what they can do. But what stops really bad people from doing really bad things, and what stops really good people from doing really bad things, right? It's kind of this yin and yang that, and I'm not saying like bad needs to go into the yang, but it's more so like looking at it from an optimistic side of things, if we can even do that, right? If more people are good than there are people that are bad, I believe ultimately the result ends up being good, right? So the idea is, if this layer of privacy can help onboard more capital, right, and make the system more efficient somehow, right, whether it be because of more liquidity or just because of more confidence, right, and obviously inspire different projects to be born throughout the way, then I don't know. I mean, I don't see it not happening, right? Where most of the world's capital ends up being on chain, if not all of it, right? Because this system just doesn't work. Like, this shuffling of gold between here, the shuffling of paper between here and there, right? Now the evolution of digital currencies, right? Like, nobody's going to do that. Like, you tell everybody in the United States, hey, look, you can't use cash anymore, right? Like, what's being pushed for in Europe or what's already been done in China. Like, you tell people that here, it's literally never going to work.
Have you seen
I don't think it'll ever work.
Have you seen the eCash development that came out of the U.S. this past week? I'm just curious if you've
No, I'm not. I haven't.
It was basically a bill that I've heard some some mixed thoughts on it, but instead of having like a digital wallet, it wouldn't be a blockchain based digital currency. What the U.S. would have, everyone's phones and their piece of hardware would like hold their cash, and so it's a hardware specific thing. So if you have like $5 I don't know whatever you want to call them, on your phone, and you lose your phone, your cash is gone.
Oh my god!
Fuck
right.
that.
I know.
Are you kidding me?
That's the thing is though, like it does have some privacy aspects to it. Supposedly, I mean, I have a tough time feeling that the government would allow something like this without having any sort of backstop. Because, I mean, if you I guess you wouldn't want to like put $1,000 in your wallet and walk around with that. And I guess same thing would go with your eCash wallet. But some interesting privacy experiments going on right there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, geez. Oh my god! Can you imagine the amount of lost money,
dude? I lose my phone, my money's gone. Oh, that's like losing your passphrase.
Well, if you put it, it's like losing your wallet. I guess it's like the same idea. So if you don't want to carry thousands of dollars of cash in your, I hope you don't. Like there's a risk to that.
I do that one time so I can pay for some stuff for my car, and I was so nervous.
Yeah,
I was so fucking nervous. Walking around with a little bank envelope, just like, okay. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
In my pocket. And in the pocket.
And in the pocket. And okay. Walking around real awkward.
Imagine like how hospitality ends up developing, right? Because like I mean, I say that because that was in the former life, I was, for lack of a better phrase, balls deep in hospitality. So imagine like people in restaurants, people in hotels, etc. Like how do you tip them, right? Like, I mean, I guess people use Cash App and Zelle these days and stuff like that, but the idea is if you're walking around with all this tip money, right? Like think about that as just an example. You're walking around with all this tip money, and people obviously know that, right? Yeah, all you have to do is just take someone's eCash wallet. It just I don't know, it presents a weird incentive for bad actors. Right? Obviously verifying, can't spend it unless you put your face, or you can't spend it unless you put your thumb or something. I don't know. Like I haven't given that too much thought as to how like a bad actor could come and, I don't know, like take advantage of that. But at the same time, it's not hard too, like the saboteur can just literally, I don't know, like mug you and throw your hard cash wallet in the lake. I don't know. That's just one way that I look at it. The same thing can exist too with hardware wallets as they exist today, right? Like Michael Saylor said something on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, which is really interesting, which was like, at the end of the day, like you put a gun to my head, and if I don't want to, I'll still never give you my Bitcoin seed phrase. It's literally in my brain. Like you'll never be able to get it if I don't say anything. Like that was really, really interesting to me. And that's what's really interesting about like the confidence that I have in I don't even know what the time would look like I said, but the confidence that I have in whether it be companies at first, firms at first, asset managers, right? And then eventually countries moving their assets on chain somehow, because at the end of the day, it doesn't, like, for example, you're Norway or you're any other country on the planet, no country going to war with you would benefit, at least monetarily. Like it would have to be out of pure desire just to literally fuck your place up. Like there's no other benefit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if people could move actual oil on chain, they would, but I don't know how we would get it from on chain into vehicles, right? Like there's no way to do that.
On chain oil, digital oil.
Digital oil. Well, I guess there is digital oil already, right? We pay UST for gas, we pay Luna for gas, we pay ETH for gas.
I've heard people call Ethereum digital oil.
Yeah, I think that's a rather basic concept because it's like, there's gas fees on every single chain. So it's obviously, I mean, I feel like that's an ETH maxi-esque term because people have been able to like just kind of, I'm not going to say pervert the idea, but like you already know like the ultrasound money theme going on, right? Yes, it is ultrasound money, but if ETH is ultrasound money, then Luna is even more ultrasound, right?
I'm a reformed ETH maxi, so I this is my world. This is my world.
Exactly.
Oh, you're an ETH maxi back in the day?
That was how I began. That's how I started.
Yeah, right. So like, think about it, right? Like people could say the same thing about Luna. Oh, Luna's oil, right? Or UST's oil. Why? Because we just need it to transact on chain. So it makes sense. But at the same time, I don't think it's a high level theory. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that high level of thought. It's just kind of like low hanging fruit. Like, yeah, like we all need gas for every chain. Kava needs gas. Atom needs gas. Osmosis. I mean, they make the transactions for you, I believe. Like you never pay gas in Osmo, but it's just an example. Like every single chain needs gas. So how is ETH better oil than the other?
You don't pay gas on osmosis?
No, it's like I don't know exactly how the gas system works, but every single time you're making a deposit or a transfer, you don't pay Osmo. Like you're approving and sending it with zero Osmo. It's weird. I don't know if it's because I have a tiny amount in my wallet because I don't. I've never even purchased Osmo in my life, but I've just never had to pay any transaction fee. And I think they might just take it from whatever it is that you're depositing or withdrawing. That could be it, but I'm not educated enough on osmosis as a whole. Even though I do pride myself on like knowing a bunch of different Cosmos, chains and tools. Osmosis itself is like something I was actually pretty bearish on based on its valuation stuff. Like while I was researching it for the fund. So yeah.
Oh, you say you were bearish on it? Let's talk.
Not bearish on it, but more so like I'm gonna say like bearish on the actual like purchasing the token itself for like long term value. That was
like the actual tokenomics of the token itself.
Exactly, right. Like that's why like I was bearish on it as an asset, as an exchange, and as what it is. It's incredible. But like for example, I'd rather hold Astro, and not just because it's on Terra, but because I think eventually it can even compete with Osmosis if it were to tap into something like Thorchain, for example. Right?
Do
that's
you
just
feel
like theory.
Do you feel like the Osmosis token just doesn't have enough like value accrued?
It has zero value accrual. Literally zero value accrual. It's just purely speculatory, or I should say speculative. Like people will only bet on Osmosis for it being used, but like I mean, it has really interesting tech itself, right? Like super fluid staking is really interesting. I've never seen that anywhere else. So that's novel to Osmosis. There's a lot to unpack with Osmosis and a lot that they do. But as far as like the actual token itself, it's not something that I would personally buy. And maybe I look at this like a while from now and be like, holy shit, why did I fucking say that? I should have bought. But I don't know. Like for now, it's just not a bet that I would take. If they revamp tokenomics and things look very different in the near to midterm for it, that then in that term I would be more bullish on that as a spot holding. But like the actual tech itself is fantastic. Like Rango Exchange, I'm not sure if you guys have used as well, is also awesome. They're doing an IDO on Terra as well.
Okay.
But that was really, really cool. And for a second, it made me bearish on Thorchain because, I had spent a good part of last year just extremely bullish on Thorchain. And obviously a lot of it went to sleep because of what happened with 3 back-to-back hacks.
Yeah.
And then when I had seen Rango Exchange pop up, I'm like, okay, well, with the token, this can possibly even compete. And then now, I'm back to my ridiculously bullish phase of Thorchain, even before, this massive price increase of, past 100% at this point over the last month, because of what's actually going to happen, like what it can actually tap into. The Terra integration, I didn't think would happen as quickly as it did. But yeah, like that's why I think, like, for example, like I think I published a tweet thread recently about this. Astroport could eventually maybe route some trades through Thorchain pools, right? I don't know. That could be super interesting. Maybe I'm so wrong off that, but it's just something worth thinking about, right? Like imagine you go to Astroport and you can buy Bitcoin natively using a pool, like using Thorchain as an engine.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yikes.
Yeah, can you imagine?
And I'm super, like, if that ever were to happen, I'm super bullish on it because I don't know if you guys have been noticing on the tweeters, but there's a lot of Bitcoin maxis that are super bullish on Luna nowadays.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate alliance.
Dude, it's the ultimate alliance. Like if you're a Bitcoin maxi and you have, half a brain, you understand how big this purchase of this Bitcoin reserve is. One, because Terra Luna, we're not purchasing Bitcoin to sell it at some point. Like it's getting purchased and you might as well consider it burned. So we own 30,000 Bitcoin. You can consider those
some ridiculous number.
We damn near have turned Bitcoin to deflationary. Keep buying and burning it.
Well, it's a serious market order. Just every single day, at least. I think it's isn't it $30 million a day when
A
they're
day.
putting in? Right. So you just can
It's
constantly just every single day, regardless of the volume, you're gonna always have that $30 million purchase market order.
Yeah.
Like what? It's really I don't even know if the market's fully priced this action in yet, and just the long reaching potential of what this means for Bitcoin and Terra Luna.
Nah,
it's
I
gonna
don't
be
think it's
ridiculous.
priced in. We still got BitBoy talking about, well, Bitcoin's price is going on this run because there's an ETF that might get like, no, nah, it's not the ETF. It's definitely Do Kwon. It's definitely Terra Luna. We're starting this bull run ourselves.
The legacy. One day we'll get the legacy. We have to call them legacy crypto media at this point. Oh my god!
Legit.
But like a lot of those guys still have not come around to Terra, which I find to be kind of funny considering it's sitting in the top 10. But we're seeing Pomp now warm up to it. We're seeing other Bitcoin personalities warm up to Terra, or at least the idea of having this Bitcoin standard backed, in a way, stable coin. Very interesting. And then Chris, I'm curious because you've mentioned Thorchain, you've mentioned Osmosis, you mentioned some of your thinking with privacy. What narratives are you? Is that just the general narrative you're paying attention to right now? Is what the kind of privacy developments will occur with blockchain tech?
Interesting question. So yeah, personally, one thing that I'm really looking out for is Railgun. Currently, this is on ETH mainnet, but with a lot of developments yet to come. And essentially, what Railgun is, and they've deployed elsewhere. They've deployed to Binance Smart Chain, Polygon. They'll deploy to Solana, Polkadot, and so this multi-chain narrative was really interesting for me. But I do think the privacy narrative does need some time. However, there's been spikes, at least price-wise, in the interim. So, but what's really interesting though about Railgun is that they essentially build this layer between protocols, right? Where you'll be able to deposit into the Railgun smart contract and then use, for example, Uniswap, SushiSwap, Bancor. You'll be able to use Aave privately. You'll be able to use Maker privately, right? So this would all need to happen though through the Railgun smart contract, right? So you need to deposit into Railgun first and then be able to use those protocols through the Railgun smart contract, or what's called the Railgun, like the actual rail between these protocols. Now, there's some other interesting developments as well, such as OffShift. And OffShift, the tickers XFT, if anybody just didn't catch the name. And it's funny, I own none of this, so I can publicly shill what I don't own, and be mentally okay with it. Okay. And I just don't own any right now because obviously I'm just very, very concentrated on my bag centered on my bets, right? So obviously what we've already talked about, it's not a secret that I'm really, really heavy on Luna in terms of like my own personal portfolio allocation. But privacy right now is not in my portfolio, specifically because my portfolio is not designed right now for just multi-year holdings. It's more so optimized for things like, I don't know, I would say the next time I would purchase privacy related tokens is either one, if we take a very, very bearish turn and I just see massive opportunity, massive blood. So then there's an opportunity to buy again. Or if there was some sort of, if obviously the tech was built out and there was a real need for like the deposit to privacy, if that makes sense, like depositing into privacy smart contracts or private smart contracts like Railgun, depositing into private layers like OffShift that use ZK bulletproofs, Secret Network. It's a great point as well. So yeah, I'm excited for things like Starkware, ZK Sync. These things, I think personally, and I've been talking about this since late last year, I do believe that Starkware and ZK Sync, coming to mainnet, will kick off the next cycle because of everything that will happen on there, right? So it's kind of like, in my opinion, Starkware being valued at a $2 billion company, and ZK Sync, I don't even know the number at this point. But think about everything that's happened already on mainnet, right? On these public ledgers. Everything will recreate itself on these private layers, and possibly even the ability to do even more, right? Because of transaction costs, finality, right? Like all these different things are going to be possible at these layers, right? Like not only privacy, but just pure like speed, right? So for me, it's just pretty abysmal. Like for example, like making a purchase on Ethereum is just so painful sometimes, especially like if you're rotating assets from one thing being staked to then not being staked and then swapping it out. You know, you miss so much in terms of price action from a trader's perspective. It's hard to do that type of stuff. I've recently I didn't even start using Arbitrum when it came out. I waited a while after it came out to start using it. And I was like extremely impressed by the transaction speed, right? Like extremely impressed at the time in which things get done and finalized. And like, I can make 4 transactions in less than 20 seconds.
Yeah.
What?
Like maybe one transaction will happen on Ethereum mainnet if I bump way up to higher than anybody else that's using it, right? But what's the likelihood of that at this point, right? With so many millions of people using Ethereum at the same time. Whereas Starkware, yeah, exactly. Regardless, I mean, that's shit I'm looking forward to, right? Like, look at Starkware. They're talking about layer 4, dude. We're not even we're not even fully out on layer 2 yet. Like, if anybody goes to Starkware's Medium,
you said layer 4. I was like, I don't know.
I was like, what the fuck am I reading right now?
After 3. What do you mean?
Seriously, like
4?
If you go on Starkware's Medium right now, if you go on their Medium account right now, you'll see that they publish an article with this green fractal, and they talk about something like fractals in the name, or fractional scaling to layer 4 or something like that. I was like, what the hell? Like layer 4 or layer 5, they even mentioned on there. It's so weird. It's so weird. But yeah, I would say it's definitely worth looking into. I just think this type of shit needs time. And right now is not the time for it, right? I mean, I'm not saying that not right now is not the time for it. There are people building on it, right? Like there's things that already exist on Starkware at the very basic level, like Dope Wars, for example, with ticker paper, extremely low market cap P2E game. You know, like full disclosure, I don't have bags as well. It's just something I know of. And as a crypto researcher and previously at a hedge fund, you have to be a project whore. So you have to know, you know, basically most of everything that's going on in the space. Right. So that's why I say these things. And I could publicly say that I don't even have bags of most of the things that I talk about. Specifically because imagine managing a portfolio of that size. Right. And I'm not talking about size like dollar amount. I'm talking about size of just different shit. You know, like there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, let me throw $100 at this. Let me throw $100 at that. And then next thing you know, they've got 20 bags of $100 each, and they can't keep up with 5 updates.
Dude, that was me before I just became a Luna Maxi. I was like, it's a lot easier.
It is a lot easier. It's a lot easier on your mental health. It's a lot easier on your professional life, your personal life, because you're not worried about something happening with one thing and not happening with another. You also reap less gains when that happens, like on a portfolio level. So yeah, that was me for years before, you know, I would say like early 2021. Right. So
dude, I don't think I made my side. I was kind of like similar where I got introduced into the crypto world, and then like my mind was just everywhere. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on over here? What's going on with Polkadot? What's going on with this with ADA? What's going on with ETH? What's going on with all these different like there's so many things happening in the crypto world, and I was invested into so many different things that it's like you said, it becomes almost impossible really kind of keep up with like everything that's kind of happening. Because even just being invested in the Luna ecosystem now, it's a
lot. Yeah, it's a lot. Shit, I don't even know what the hell's going on.
Like crazy.
You really do.
Even keep somewhat of track. And I really do try to pay attention to other chains and what's happening. And I try to make sure I'm staying outside of Terra. It's a problem though, because you get so comfortable in one ecosystem and then you have this all this other great stuff is happening. You're like, I don't know how to.
I would say like as a researcher, that's a really important skill to develop, but it's hard at the same time. And even many times I still struggle with it where, you know, like you said, you get comfortable just researching one ecosystem, you miss totally what's happening on the next one. And like I think podcasting, which is why I think you guys are extremely smart for what you do, is like one of the coolest and smartest ways to get information about what's going on outside of your own echo chamber / scope. Right. So without having to go and just research like people's Twitter threads and stuff like that, which I do an unhealthy amount of. But yeah,
Also,
that's one way to put it.
Also, Luna just hit another all-time high. So.
Get the fuck out of here.
Let
Get out of
go.
here. What are we talking? What are we talking here?
We're talking
we're about
115.
Jesus
Hey,
Christ.
that's pretty
That's
huge.
awesome. Holy shit.
We're about at the
Oh my
1 hour
God.
mark, so I just want to I want to make sure everyone gets some closing thoughts in. So if there's anything else we want to share before closing out, please go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I would say what I'm also excited about that we didn't talk about today was I think, and this could be a rather crazy bet, but I do see it happening. I mean, you saw Do Kwon talking with Jaws from the Olympus community last night.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that one day, it could be in 2022, it could be later, Olympus will revise its minting of the Ohm token to being backed by one UST rather than being backed by one DAI. And I do believe that if you're trying to become a decentralized uh, currency essentially or algorithmic currency, you have to use decentralized money. Um, and I think Do Kwon had responded to Josh saying, if you guys contribute to the four pool, basically that I forgot exactly what he said, but something about Olympus contributing would end up leading him to becoming an OMI, right? And becoming an OMI at Do Kwon's level, right? When he was telling Algod the other day that your size is not size, like when you're talking about TFL type size, that would be not only massive for Olympus, but that would be massive as a whole for the entire stablecoin community, as if UST is not doing enough, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be one thing for me. But to close with all the conversations we had, I'm extremely, extremely excited for Redacted Cartel to be part of the team. Very happy with not only what's going on, but the ability to bring Hidden Hand Marketplace to Terra, because I do believe that the maturity of the Terra ecosystem is growing by the day. And I'm extremely excited for the lunatics to fly with us, right? And to be so embedded in both communities now. I'm also really excited for the ability for a lot of lunatics to kind of like escape the bubble. Sometimes that is the Terra ecosystem. And see what's happening with things like the curve wars, for example. It's kind of crazy how uneducated many people, not just in the Terra community, but overall, it could be the Near ecosystem, the Avalanche ecosystem, etc., are unfamiliar with the curve wars and what's actually happening with it, the significance of it. So I do think that this is a really interesting segue that bridges both worlds. So it really couldn't be happier to be a part of that team, and also so embedded in the Terra community, which is kind of like my first love as far as communities is concerned.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Rick, you got any closing thoughts, and then I'll close it out.
If anything I heard from this conversation, if I took one thing away, it is DAI is in trouble and DAI could die.
I could die, yeah.
DAI is not looking great at this current pace. And yeah, I thank you so much for your time today, Chris. A lot of great insights there and some interesting.
Thank you so much to both of you guys.
Take away. And then Brevi.
Let's close it out, man. Again, to Chris, man, thank you. Even though Rick just said that, but thank you so much, dude. Like, really, really appreciate you, man. You always coming here, dropping hella knowledge, man. I remember when I talked to you on the Mighty Well podcast, you was dropping mad knowledge then, and here you are again dropping mad knowledge now. Very, very excited for next weekend's episode the part 2. Where we got Sammy on here, founder of Redacted Cartel, so we can dive super deep into the curve wars, because at the end of the day, this is in fact huge. From the small understanding that I have, I'm understanding that this is going to be huge. So I'm very, very excited to get a more detailed understanding from it next weekend. To the audience that's been watching R&B Crypto, we appreciate you so much. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow Rick, make sure Lunatic Station, make sure you follow me and Quan We Trust. Chris, can you give them your social real quick?
Yeah. So 0xUST. So you guys can hit me on there. You'll see random tweet threads about random shit. Maybe a lot of butterflies on the TL now since we're flying.
And So make sure you go check him out. We'll have the links in the description for you so you don't miss out on anything. Chris is a major alpha dropper, as you can tell just from this quick episode that we did. So make sure you go follow him. Make sure you follow Rick. It's not at Lunatic Station. It's at Station Lunatic.
It'll get you there. it'll get you there.
Follow me at Inquami Trust. This has been R&B Crypto. We appreciate y'all so much. We will see y'all next week.
Thanks,
Peace.